We are. First of all, I mean, I'm very impressed by the Eagles. I put out my power rankings about an hour ago, and they're number one. I think they're playing like the best team in football right now. Now, they've got to sustain that, but right now, through 3 weeks, I think they've been the most impressive team. I know they and Miami are both the only undefeated teams. The Dolphins have won games, though, that I don't think they can sustain.
You're being on the stream. The water's fine here on Birds 365 as we talk about the undefeated Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah, people are pretty stoked and excited with the way the Eagles have played here in Philadelphia. Let's get a national perspective on them. Joining us from Fansided and one of the best football podcasts I listen to is Stack the Box podcast every week is On Point. Matt Verderame joins us here on Birds 365. How you been, MV?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Doing good, Matt. Let's start you off with the obvious question. Who's better, the 85 Bears or the current Eagles?
Well, the Bears lost. The Eagles haven't.
That's true. That's true. Good point. Good point. But how impressed have you been with this team and Jalen Hurts specifically, the improvement? We all talk about, there's this narrative Jody and I have talked about that you can't get accurate yet. And I think player development is real. We've seen it in Josh Allen in Buffalo. We now see it with Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia. Guys can improve, and we're seeing it in real time.
We are. First of all, I mean, I'm very impressed by the Eagles. I put out my power rankings about an hour ago, and they're number one. I think they're playing like the best team in football right now. Now, they've got to sustain that, but right now, through 3 weeks, I think they've been the most impressive team. I know they and Miami are both the only undefeated teams. The Dolphins have won games, though, that I don't think they can sustain. Like, I don't think the Dolphins are winning games that are outgained by 300 yards every week. That's not going to continue to happen. The Eagles are just killing teams. I mean, there's a difference in the way these teams are winning games. And when you look at it, what's not to like? Hurts is averaging over 300 yards through the air. You've got 3 guys who are on pace for 1,000 yards catching the ball. Sanders is having a really good start to the year running the ball. You had 9 sacks last weekend over Washington. Now, some of that is Carson Wentz got involved. But that being said, 9 sacks is 9 sacks. I don't care who you're playing.
Yeah.
Look, they are playing really well. And as far as Hurts goes, you're right. Like, most guys don't get more accurate. Most guys, typically, if you're not accurate in college, you're not accurate in pros. But with Hurts got better every year he was in college. Hurts went from Alabama to Oklahoma. I remember when he was coming out talking to people in the league who felt like, look, he was coached by Nick Saban and Lincoln Riley. Like, those are 2 guys that even in the pros are well respected. So the thought was, hey, he's going to be a guy who can come in, who can learn, who's got a capacity to get better. He's done that. I mean, look, you don't hand out awards over 3 weeks, but if you were, he's the MVP of the league through 3 weeks of the season.
That's pretty damn impressive. And give me your take on this, because this is what annoyed me when people would say, he can't get more accurate. I said, yeah, he can. Don't know that he will, but he can. It is possible. Those who just dismiss it and say it can't happen are wrong. And a big part of that, at least for me, is, but you have to work at it. And from the day he walked in here in Philadelphia, coming in as a second-round pick, people said, man, this kid's got a good work ethic, that Jalen Hurts is ready to put in the time, the effort, everything needed, everything that you have to have to be able to improve and see your game be upwardly mobile. How big a deal is that, do you think? Or do we overstate that to just everybody works hard, everybody's trying to get to that second contract? Yeah, Jalen Hurts may work hard, but he's just one of everybody else. Or is that something that maybe those who said he couldn't get more accurate didn't put enough stock in?
No, definitely not everybody works hard. I mean, that some guys, they're blessed with an incredible amount of talent, and they worked hard enough. And then they get there and they don't work that hard. Hurts has put in a lot of time. And I think to also make the point too, the Eagles have given him a ton of support. I remember this offseason, I wrote a piece on the Eagles offseason and kind of detailed every move they made and why they made it, and the inside thought about why they did what they did. And talking to people around the team for the piece, like, the general thought was, look, we've got to find out just how good Jalen Hurts can be. And it's not fair to this kid to give him a half-assed effort. Like, we need to put the best team around him that we can and then see if he can thrive, because we think he can do it. Well, he's done it. So I think Howie Roseman, who I know has been a lightning rod at times in Philly, one way or the other, like he deserves a lot of credit. They have a really good roster, around them. And, and Hurts deserves credit because he's taken that opportunity and he's run with it. He could have had a good roster around him and just not been good, not worked hard enough, whatever the case may be. I also think it helped them that they gave him Nick Sirianni basically from the start of his career as a starter, and they've allowed him to grow together. You see a lot of times coaches going in and out, and team like right now at the Bears with Justin Fields, right? Like teams trying to figure this thing out. It's a new system, but like how important coaching is in football. Look at the Jacksonville Jaguars who are going into Philadelphia on Sunday. That team, like I understand they added talent, but they didn't add anybody who's going to the Hall of Fame on that team. Okay, and now they are 3-0. Excuse me, they're 2-1. Feels like they're 3-0. They're 2-1. They just beat the hell out of the Chargers. Trevor Lawrence looks like a completely different player, right? I mean, year to year, 1 year to the next, looks completely different. Why? Because he's well coached. I mean, you see that in Hurts as well. The Eagles have done a nice job surrounding him, coaching him up, and he's done a nice job of putting in the work.
Yeah, and my dog's chiming in to agree with you, Matt. So if you hear her, but I want to talk about, you mentioned the supporting cast. To me, A.J. Brown specifically offensively has been this domino piece where everything falls into place. Like Devonta Smith is a great young receiver. You saw him last week have his career game at Washington. But, as a number one in this league, he's probably that's a good player, but he's not a great player as a number one. As a number two, he's a great player. He's a great player. Or Dallas Goedert, you can go 2 or 3. You can toggle it back and forth with Dallas Goedert and Devonta Smith. But you saw last season when those were your 2 top options, defenses could, formulate a game plan. Now that domino of A.J. Brown, what do you do? Who do you cover with this offense? And then you add the running game on top of it.
Well, it's all those things, and it's also, look, they have diverse skill sets. So it really, they fit together well. Brown is that bigger-bodied receiver who, he can get down the field, but he also can just run these intermediate routes, and he's very hard to box out. He's very hard to tackle. Smith is a burner. He can get down the field. He can take a slant and go 50 yards with it. And Goddard, of course, is, he'll do all the things tight ends do. He'll run his stick routes, he'll run down the seam, so on and so forth. They fit really well together. And I know when I talked to people for that piece I mentioned earlier, like that was a thought of like, okay, they actually built it out with a basketball team in mind. They wanted to fit it like, okay, this guy is like a driver and a slasher, and this guy is going to post up and so on and so forth. And I think they did a great job. I mean, if you look at the way this team is fit, it really has worked. And Brown is that big-bodied guy who also gives Hurts a big target, like literally a physically big target. Who, look, if he's not open, he's still open. Throw it to him. Throw him the ball. It's 3rd and 7, that's fine. Let him go up and make a play. You see how much Tennessee misses him. They can't throw the ball for anything. So I'll be honest, I was shocked that the Titans traded him. But the Eagles, I mean, the fact A.J. Brown and Hollywood Brown both went for a first-round pick to me is staggering. Like, they're not even in the same stratosphere as players. And I think the Eagles, 4 years and 100 for A.J. Brown in this day and age, it's a pretty good deal. I'd take it. So, listen, it has all worked for Philadelphia at this point. Everybody's playing well. The line play is always a point of emphasis in Philadelphia, and the lines have been great. So, when you look at it, sitting at 3-0, and you go down the list of the next 6-7 opponents on the schedule. I mean, Philadelphia's probably going to be favored in every one of these games. So you feel pretty good about that. Like the Eagles are off and running, and in the division where they could maybe run away and hide a little bit here if somebody could ever beat Cooper Rush.
That's where I was going next. We did the wide focus. Eagles could be the best team in the NFL. Let's go more narrow focus, NFC East. Cowboys, Giants, Monday Night Football last night. I said this earlier on the show. I was kind of impressed by both defenses. I thought both defenses played pretty well.
Yeah.
I wasn't impressed by either offense. Sorry, Cooper Rush. I know you know how to win, but you're not.
All he does is win, Jody. All he does is win.
Okay. What was it you just said, John? It can't be sustainable.
No.
Cooper Rush's undefeated record also cannot be sustained. Are they going to run away and hide in the NFC East here? Is there anyone, either the Cowboys or we don't think it's going to be the Commanders? They handled them as easily as they did on Sunday. Out of the Giants, Cowboys, which one can hang in with the Eagles for as long as they can?
The Cowboys, only because if Dak comes back and he's healthy, then they're a real team. I don't think they're a great team, but I think they're like a playoff caliber team. So I would say that the Giants, look, I think Dable's a really good hire, and I think he's going to make them more competitive. That being said, Daniel Jones can't play. He's just not good. And you're not winning 10, 11, 12 games with Daniel Jones, which is, I think, at bare minimum what you're going to have to do to keep up with Philadelphia. I mean, if you look at Philadelphia's schedule, no, they got to play Dallas a few times. That can obviously shrink gaps and stuff like that. But, I mean, the Eagles' schedule is not that hard. It really is not. As you look down the stretch here, it's a little harder toward the end of the year. But no, I think Dallas is probably the only one. Washington's not good. The Giants, I know, are 2-1. The hell, they might be 3-1. They play the Bears this weekend at the Meadowlands. I think the Giants will fade. The Cowboys are the team that if they can stay afloat here and they get Washington at home, they could very well win that game even with Rush. If they stay afloat, they could be a team that wins in double digits. So I think it's definitely Dallas. Washington and New York, to me, are just after Rams. And maybe New York hangs around a little bit after the fast start, but I don't think the talent level is anywhere near what Philadelphia has.
All right, I'm going to put the cart before the horse here, Matt. But I want to get the national perspective from this. And we know how difficult it is to build your teams. You just talked about the job, and I agree with you. Howie Roseman did tremendous job. It's a lot easier to do when you're paying the quarterback $1 million. After this season, Jalen Hurts is eligible for an extension for the first time. If he continues to play like this, that's going to be a big number. How difficult does it become there? You talk about, what is it? Is it Jalen Hurts' improvement? Is it the roster around him? The obvious answer is it's a little bit of both. Yeah. But how much more difficult when he gets that second contract does this become?
Well, I think, look, first off, it is both, right? I mean, look, you can't talk about Hurts being this much better without talking about how much better the team is. I mean, that's just part and parcel. And I know some people take that as like criticism of Jalen Hurts. It's not. It's just reality. He's got a better team around him. So, and he's taking advantage of it. You're right, though. Like, look, John, if they continue to play like this, and Hurts is like, let's even say he's not the MVP of the league, but let's say he's, top 10 quarterback, no doubt by the end of the year. Okay, well, you're paying him. You're paying him, and guess what? You're paying him $50+ million a year because that's what the going rates could be. I talked to 3 very prominent agents right around Memorial Day for a column I did about Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert, and said, look, if these guys have good years, and you were their agents, what would you ask for? And all of them individually said $55 million a year. So, I mean, Hurts is going to be expensive. Hurts is not going to be cheap. This is not going to be, he's not getting $41 million a year. He's going to get 50+, and Lamar Jackson might get about 60 based off the way that thing's going in Baltimore right now. So, look, it gets harder. Now, it should be noted that a lot of times with these extensions, those big dollars don't kick in until after the rookie deal ends. So the Eagles, I think, would still have a couple of years where they'd have very affordable cap hits. With Hurts, it would be after that. I think the Eagles probably have this and maybe 2 more years of like, okay, they can, especially 1 more year, and then the option gets a little more expensive. But I think for 2 more years, Eagles be okay financially. And then it becomes, you got to make a decision. You got to make decisions on certain guys. And you see that all around the league. I mean, the Bills are about to go through that. The Bills, they better win the Super Bowl this year. Yeah. Because when that number goes up with Allen, a lot of that defense is going to be out the door. It's got to be. You can't afford. That's why Chiefs traded Tyreek Hill. The Chiefs traded Tyreek Hill because they had to build their defense through the draft. They knew there's no way we can just go out and sign 3 more guys. You can't. So the key, of course, is when that day comes, you've got to build through the draft. And the Eagles have drafted well. If you can continue to draft well, you'll be fine. It's the teams that can't draft well that all of a sudden become very top-heavy, like I think, frankly, the Rams are about to become, and you fall off because now you're paying this quarterback, but yet you don't have any influx of talent.
You're right about the Jalen Hurts thing. That's a little scary. Jalen, 50+.
Those numbers.
We haven't gotten into that 50+ conversation yet, but you're probably right there.
Coming.
And, oh, by the way, remember, he's a second-round draft pick, so they don't have an option year.
That's true.
They got one more
You're
year.
right. You're right.
Year on, and then the year after, it's going to balloon up pretty quickly because he was the first-round guy. Do want to ask you a National Football League, across the league question. Before the year started, I said the AFC West is the unquestionable best division in football, and I didn't really think it was close. Not so fast, my friend.
No.
Chiefs lose to a team that hadn't won a game yet. Chargers get pounded. I know they got some injuries, but that's life in the National Football League. You got to deal with injuries. Get beat up badly by the Jags. Denver, to their credit, held on and won in a snore fest 11-10 against the 49ers.
We should all file a class action lawsuit for that game.
Yeah, that wasn't the most exciting game ever to come down the pike. And by the way, the Josh McDaniels-led Raiders, man, do I feel good about this because I think the guy's a stiff. And he was almost the coach of the Eagles. Johnny Mack can tell you that whole story. And he can't coach his way out of a paper bag. But the Raiders are 0-3. What the hell happened to the AFC West?
Well, I think you kind of just hit on the point I was going to make. The coaching stinks in the AFC West. That's what happened.
Ooh, don't let Andy hear you say that.
Hey, listen, I'm not talking about Andy right now. Although although Andy's had his own issues so far this year with their offense. But I think, look, when you look at these four teams, Nathaniel Hackett, I've never seen anybody ever more in over his head through two games. I mean, it is
Josh McDaniels with Denver. He was the last one.
Yeah, Denver's really got a long-standing tradition with this. Like, I mean, Hackett. It honestly, like I almost feel bad saying it because it feels like piling on at this point. But it feels like if a kid played against him in Madden, like a 13-year-old kid, they'd be able to just handle him, right? I mean, it's unbelievable how incompetent they are running anything, right? Like whether it's like getting out there and snapping the ball on time or it's having a punt returner on the field. Like it's been bad. Also, that's been married with Russell Wilson has not looked like they expected him to look. So you have that in Denver. The Raiders, I mean, Jody, you said exactly what I was going to say. Like Josh McDaniels, by the way, do you know in his last 25 games as a head coach, he's 5-20?
Oh.
Yeah, it's not good.
Oof.
Okay. And also, they can't block the three of us. So they have all kinds of problems. Devonta Adams maybe would like to go back to his former Hall of Fame quarterback, not his current one. And then you have the Chargers who, look, I said this at the beginning of the year, and I feel fairly vindicated with this. The Chargers, I think, are really talented if you look at their top 10, 12 guys on the roster. Maybe the most talented in football. The problem is after that, they are very, very shallow on their depth chart. And if you have any kind of injuries, you have a big, big, big problem. Well, they have a lot of injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing about them, they find ways to lose games. They should have beat the Chiefs in week 2. They dropped 1 million interceptions. Mahomes had probably the worst day of his life. He threw 4 balls right at guys who couldn't catch any of them. The Chiefs had a 7th-round rookie catch a ball and run 100 yards the other direction. Like, he might have ran with the division title. Because when you look at these teams, look, Kansas City had an awful loss to the Colts. If you guys watch that game or anybody watching the show watch that game,
yeah, I watched that.
That game looked like the Chiefs bet the Colts money line. That game was unbelievable. Kansas City did everything imaginable to lose that game and still almost won. I think the Chiefs will be fine. They might even lose this week in Tampa, but I think the Chiefs are going to win their 12 games, and they will, I think, eventually win this division by a couple of games. When they get to January, they'll be as scary as anybody. But look, you guys watched Andy Reid for a long time. There are some games he comes out with plans that it's unbelievable, and nobody can touch him. And there are other games where it's like, did they prepare for this team? Did they know this game was coming? That fell into the latter category, but I think Kansas City will be just fine. I think Kansas City is clearly the best team in the division.
Yeah, with Nathaniel Hackett, it's interesting, Matt, because I got the feeling that they hired him. Their whole plan was Aaron Rodgers bait.
Yes, it was.
And then they didn't get Aaron Rodgers, and that's not why you hire a coach. I mean, that was a bet, and I love George Payton. I love him. I think he's a great personnel guy. But, man, that was a bad hire. I hate that, short sample size. But you're right. He's just completely unprepared.
It's never good when 2 games into a career, you're hiring a coach to coach your coach. Like, they literally brought in an assistant head coach to just make decisions for him on game day. That's a problem. If you have to do that after 2 games, it probably is not going to be a long-standing situation. Oh, the other part with Denver too, I got to tell you, I just don't think when you watch them offensively, they've got good running backs. I think Sutton's a nice receiver. Judy can be at times, although Judy drops the ball too often. They just don't have a ton of talent. Like offensively, they're all right. I'm not saying they're without talent, but they're not loaded. You don't look at them and say, how do you stop them? And if Russell Wilson's not going to scramble and he's not going to run for some yardage, he's a totally different quarterback. I mean, he's just a completely different player, right? So I think that AFC West, you guys are right. Like, you look at it, I think the Chargers have enough talent that perhaps they can turn around, but losing Slater is a huge injury.
Yeah.
That offensive line without him is a big problem. And then you compound that with, oh, by the way, the quarterback has fractured rib cartilage. Like, none of it's good. I will say, they play the Texans this week in Houston. And normally you'd say, oh, that's a get-right game. This is a game over the course of the years with the Chargers where this is the game, like, they go down there and lose by 20 points inexplicably. So can they win? Because if they lose this game, it might be time to turn out the lights. We'll see.
All right, Maddie, I want to ask about one other team, not a whole division, but one team that I may have to eat some crow on. I was pretty bullish on the Saints coming into the season. John and I went back and forth on this. He thinks the Eagles are going to benefit from having the Saints pick because it actually could be in a pretty good spot. As of right now, it's the 7th overall pick, so he's right. Maybe I put too much faith in Jameis Winston. Maybe I put too much faith in their defense. Alvin Kamara's looked average for me this year. I thought when they got his suspension pushed back because he keeps dragging his feet in court. All right, got to get off to a fast start. Winston looks like Jameis. He's got 4 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. Did I blatantly overrate the Saints before the year started?
Yes, but so did I. So I'm in the same boat as you. I thought they would be a good team. I thought they'd win 10, 11 games just because their roster looks like a really good roster. The problem is Jameis is playing like Jameis. He also has a bunch of back fractures, which I don't think is helping anything. And Dennis Allen kind of looks like head coach Dennis Allen and not defensive coordinator Dennis Allen. Like, their offense stinks. Their offense has way too much talent to be this bad, and yet it is this bad. They're lucky they're not 0-3, honestly.
True.
I mean, they're really fortunate they're not 0-3. So they've not played well. They have not been good. Jameis just – there are times with him where you're tantalized by his talent, and then there are other times, and frankly, more often than not, the times you're like, what are you doing? Why are you throwing that ball? Who are you looking at? It's just – when you have a defense as good as New Orleans has, you think like you would just play a safer game, but he doesn't. He will just throw the ball into harm's way because he doesn't care. Like, he will take chances that are reckless. And then again, I think the coaching too, like their offense, you're right. Like, it should be through Alvin Kamara. Well, it hasn't been. It hasn't been through Alvin Kamara. So, the Saints throw the ball deep more often than any team in football, but they're not hitting on these throws. They're just throwing incompletions down the field. It's not working out. Chris Olave's looked pretty good, but other than that, it's not been good in New Orleans.
Yeah, to me, it was kind of simple with the Saints, and Drew hasn't been there for a while. But, to assume you're going to be the same team, but you're moving on from Drew Brees and Sean Payton, who I don't think is a Hall of Fame coach, but he's a very good coach, and you're replacing him with Dennis Allen. Well, they went 11 games with those guys, 11-12. They're not going to win 11-12 with Jameis Winston and Dennis Allen. To me, I don't know. You're going to have those hiccups when you make that kind of change. Plus, I'm not a big Dennis Allen fan, but I am a big Doug Peterson fan. I want to ship to the Jags with you, Matt. Now, they've been bad for so long. And I said that was my easiest prediction because Urban Meyer was such a disaster. You were going to get professionalism. So it was obvious to me that Jacksonville was going to be very happy with Doug Peterson, at least early in the process. But they've been drafting, the top of the draft for so long. All of a sudden you wake up and say, oh, I got some talent here. And the Jags, they look like a potential playoff team to me. Am I skipping steps?
No, I don't think you are. That division is atrocious. So, I mean, they might win that division. Look, I thought they'd win 7 or 8 games this year. I think I picked them to go 7-10 officially, but I'm not surprised they're a lot better. They couldn't have been any worse. And I really do believe, and you guys have a few years on me, but I think like Urban Meyer's got to be the worst head coach I've ever seen in the NFL ever. Like hilariously bad, right? Like almost to the point that you thought it was a bit at one point. Like it was just going to be like a long game that Saturday Night Live had going for 4 months. Like I can't believe he was ever head coach in the NFL. Doug Peterson, say whatever you want. I mean, he's a Super Bowl winning head coach. He's an adult in the room. He knows how to coach offense. And by the way, it's working out. Like they are moving the ball. When you watch them, and I've watched every snap of them this year, like they don't do anything down the field, really. They're not a team that's going down the field. It's a lot of quick games, a lot of short passes underneath. It's a lot of James Robinson and Travis Etienne. But you know what? It's working. Moving the ball right down the field. Now, they're going to run into teams that are more talented than them. I think they might have a tough weekend this weekend in Philadelphia. But they're not going to run into any teams more talented than them in the division. They're more talented than those three teams. You know, the AFC South this year, they play the AFC West. They just killed the Chargers. They could definitely beat Denver and the Raiders. Those games are at home. You know, would I pick them to go into Arrowhead and win? No, probably not. But so what? If you go 3-1 against the AFC West, you're pretty happy about it. I'm impressed by them. And I thought 7-8 wins at the beginning of the year. I could see them maybe getting to 9 or 10 wins. I could see that. Lawrence is playing a lot better. They've got some real talent. Like, I don't think they're as good as Buffalo, Kansas City, Baltimore. I don't think they're there yet. But could they make the playoffs and win that division? Yeah, they could. And that's a huge step for a team that's been the number one overall pick holder the last couple of years.
Matty, last thing for me, and this is something that I think I'm borderline obsessed with. Today is day 32 of Aaron Donald's free pass from assaulting a Cincinnati Bengal player with a helmet, and we've heard nothing. Zero zilch in weeks now about if there's going to be any repercussions for what he did. The NFL is trying its hardest to sweep this under the rug. I understand the Rams trying to sweep it under the rug because they don't want to lose the best defensive player in the National Football League. But the league has to do something about this. And I'm not buying the whole, we can't do anything because it's practice. Well, you can punish the Rams and then ask the Rams to turn around and punish the player. They've done nothing. If we have you on 5 weeks from now, am I going to say it's day 72 of the free pass for Aaron Donald from the National Football League? How's this stuff going to shake out?
Yeah, yes, that's exactly what's going to happen. The NFL's not going to do anything. But I give you credit. You might be the only person who still.
He is. That's what I said. Matt,
I'm perfectly fine with that.
No, but that's fine.
To be the banner carrier, I will, because it's hypocrisy at its highest.
But here's the point, Jody. The NFL, sticks their finger up, and what's the wind? Nobody's talking about it except Jody McDonald, so they don't care.
I'll beat that drum until the cows come home.
I appreciate that, Jody. You have this commitment. Like you've hung on there for more than a month at this point. That is admirable. I do not think anything is going to happen because I don't think the NFL is concerned about it. But I agree with you in one way, though. Like, look, if you're going to have all these joint practices, okay, it's not just a regular team practice. Now it is more like a scrimmage. And now, okay, it's not a game. I get that, but it's two teams getting together. If you got a guy swinging a helmet and cracking somebody over the head with it, like that's a problem. Okay.
Yes.
And Aaron Donald, like you've got, like here, you know what? Here's my way of putting it. So right now this all happened in games. This is different, but I think the hypocrisy point stands. Tom Brady, I think it's fair to say, against the Saints, incited a fight. Okay, him and Bruce Arians were at the middle of inciting this whole thing that Mike Evans got suspended for, and rightfully so. By the way, pushed the guy with the camera. That's fine, but Brady gets nothing out of this. Nothing. Not a fine. Not a talk. Nothing. We talked about this game earlier. The Chiefs and the Colts. As bad as the Chiefs were, they're going to win that game. And Chris Jones gets called for unsportsmanlike conduct for talking to Matt Ryan. With 4 minutes to go in the game, it was 4th and 13. The Colts are going to have to punt the ball back to the Chiefs. We're up 4 at this point. They're going to win the game if they get the punt back. Chris Jones gets called for talking. And you're like, that flips the whole game. And yet, Tom Brady and Bruce Arians, who's not a head coach anymore, who just happens to be on the sideline, incites what was a borderline brawl in the Saints-Bucks game. Nothing, no penalty, nothing at all, just offsetting, and everybody goes, how do all these things equate? No, look, whatever. Chris Jones, he talked and he shouldn't have, fine. But if that's a penalty, how are all these guys getting penalties? That is my biggest problem with the NFL. It's consistency of the calls. And the consistency, by the way, of suspensions as well, which is just all over the map. Guy does this, he gets this. Guy does the same thing a year later, he gets 2 games more. It doesn't make a lot of sense. The NFL should be a lot better with that.
And I think of it as not an easy job. I think Goodell's got one of the hardest jobs on the planet. And that's why he gets paid $30 to $40 million. It's not easy. And from time to time, he stubs his toe and gets it wrong. There's no stubbing of the toe here with Aaron Donald. He swung a helmet in anger at another. The NFL, the most conscious concussion company on the planet, are going to let him get away with doing something like that.
Jody, you know this league does everything because of the court of public opinion. So before you blame the NFL, blame the fans who are not. If the fans were up in arms, they would do something, but they don't care. So the league doesn't care. And the hypocrisy is there. But I always say pointing out hypocrisy to hypocrites is a fruitless exercise because they don't care. They don't care about hypocrisy.
Yeah, you're right.
Well,
and when will it become a big issue here in Philadelphia? When the Eagles are playing the Rams in the NFC Championship game. Everyone over, hey, Jody, you were right. Why don't we suspend Aaron Donald this week? That's when it will become a topic of conversation here in Philadelphia. Matty V, always a pleasure, buddy. Thank you much for hopping on board. Since I mentioned 5 weeks, why don't we get you back in 5 weeks? Circle it on your calendar now. We're going to need you back in 5 weeks, okay?
Hey, let's do it anytime, guys.